You're the boss.
This meeting of the Hubbardston Planning Board, we do have a quorum in place. Planning board meetings are broadcast live and digitally recorded. The meeting is being held both in person and virtually through Zoom pursuant to the COVID-19 rules, allowing public meetings to be conducted remotely so that board and committee members as well as members of the public can participate remotely. So, we are calling it to order, and the first order of business is to elect a new chair who can do this type of work rather than me.
I make a motion that we re-elect our old chair.
The old guy.
I will second that motion.
Okay,
Yep, and then
motion being moved and seconded.
Discussion.
Let's have a vote.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Discussion? Yes.
As an alternate member, do I get a vote on the chair?
I don't
I'm gonna
believe so.
say no.
Thank you.
I believe just for special permit purposes. I am happy to continue serving as chair. I am fairly invested with MRPC at this point, and with a bunch of long-term strategic projects that we have going on, so I think I still have quite a bit to offer. So I'm happy to do it for another year. Unless anybody is really passionate about it, then I'm perfectly happy to play with my son more. But other than that, I'm good to go.
I don't see Russian tanks coming towards your house and declaring a coup like the Soviet type did with Putin, so just go ahead.
Wow. Not yet.
Any other discussion?
We're honored to have you be that chair.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Vote.
So we have a vote.
Steiger, aye?
What was that?
Demalia, aye.
Dak, aye.
Motion carries.
Aye.
Monroe abstained.
4 is enough.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
How does the chair vote?
I abstained. All right, thank you, everyone. So we have a pretty busy agenda for this evening. We're doing things a little bit unconventionally. We're taking all of kind of the administrative stuff first. So coming up first, we have comments from the public. So if you are from the public and you have something you wish to comment on that is not on the agenda, now's your time. So anybody have anything they want to talk about that's not on the agenda? All right, so.
Chair, point of
Yes.
information. I know that we just had our election and we have all the
Oh.
members present. The alternate member has yet to be nominated again by the select board, correct?
Thank you for catching that. Yeah, I'm actually, let's go back to that second item, which is board organization, because there's more to that than just the election of the chair. So the next thing that we need to fill is actually the planning board clerk, and historically, we've done the planning board clerk as our staff clerk. I would like to continue doing it that way, as long as our clerk, or soon-to-be clerk is all right with that.
All right.
If that makes sense, can I get a motion from someone?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Here in a first and a second, any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, let's have a vote.
Steiger, aye?
Woman's eye.
Demalia, aye.
Dak, aye.
And the chair is aye, the motion carries. Next on the list is our associate member. Now, the associate member is actually appointed by the select board. We don't have appointing authority for our own associate member. But I think it's important that we all make a statement in support of our associate member. And I think our associate member's been doing a great job for his first few meetings. So, as long as you are willing to stay on as such, I would like to suggest that somebody make a motion to support the reappointment of Peter as the associate member for the planning board.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Here in a first and a second, any discussion? Anything you'd like to say?
Thank you.
I like that.
I don't get a vote.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to recommend and reaffirm the appointment made by the select board, which I believe they've actually already done. I think you did it in a consent agenda
I
early
think we
on.
did.
Yeah, so,
Thank you, Katie.
think.
All in
Not totally
fa-
positive. It's all a blur.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So you're right.
And the chair is aye. So we have done that. The next thing is,
So, point of information, so did I hear that you already
I
made
think
the
we
recommendation?
there was a
There
list.
was a whole long list
Yeah, there was
of
a long list, I
appointments.
can't specifically remember if he was on there or not, but I'm guessing, because it's all the
When
appointments.
did that happen, if I may ask?
The beginning of this past month.
yeah, they did it like the day after the election before we had an opportunity to meet.
Okay, procedurally, I'm just asking because I wanna make sure that we're not having to recross this here. That being therefore the case, because typically we make the recommendation, that gets then discussed, and then they vote.
Under the town charter, they can do whatever we want and we don't actually have any say on it.
I know that, but, okay.
It
You
was
feel
already
like-
that argument
Yeah.
that went.
That's fine.
I wasn't involved in
Just
that,
want-
but that was, there
For
was
what it's
that.
worth, someone did inquire with me, and I believe it was you, Chris,
Yeah.
whether or not I did wanna continue on after the, last period there, and I indicated as such.
Okay.
So, I took that as trickling uphill.
Okay, that's
Yep.
The
that's
inquiry
fine.
was made.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that we're not having to recross
Oh, you're
this here
right.
if we need to in the future. Thank
Yep,
you.
thank you for that. There's also a whole bunch of other places where planning board members serve, that's under the board organization. And I had sent out an email to everybody on the board, about this, because planning board members do a whole lot of things. And this, these positions are open to anybody on the planning board, associate or regular member. So there's, well, at least under my interpretation, there's nothing in the charter or bylaws that says it has to be a regular member. And just by a matter of practice, we've always done it that way. So, that's the way I'd like to keep doing it. So let's just run down the list and see, what folks are passionate about. So let me just get that. So, everybody received the assignments for 2022. And I'm just gonna say who's in it at the moment and then open it up for discussion. So the first place where we send a planning board member is the Affordable Housing Committee. And what the committee does is it works to identify our community housing needs to reduce out-migration of our younger residents and to minimize the displacement of our elderly on fixed incomes. The committee also works towards the Commonwealth's goal of designating 10% of the town's year-round housing stock. It was authorized by select board vote on 8/15/2022, and in 2022, member Erica Dack was serving in that role. Now, I guess first question, Erica, is that something you wanna continue doing?
I actually was just reappointed and I just sworn in too, so
Excellent.
I'm good to go.
So that's a yes then.
Yeah, definitely.
So then we'll do this all at the end as a consent agenda unless we have any that people are really excited about. Economic Development Committee, it seeks to improve the community, quality of life through expanded local business base that reflects and contributes to Hubbardston's community character. I was the appointment for last year. I would like to continue on that for this year, and then I think after this year, I'd like to hand it off to someone else. And the reason I'd like to stay on for this year is because I've been working on the rural enterprise or agricultural accessory bylaw, and I think I gotta carry that across the finish line before somebody else takes that over. So, unless anybody else is super excited about that, I'd like to stay on for that. Is anybody super excited about that?
Sounds good.
Okay, moving next
Who's gonna nominate you?
is MRPC commissioner. So we send to MRPC a commissioner who is part of the commission. That person is currently myself, and it's surprisingly difficult to get that appropriately set up and get all the forms in. But either way, it's neither here nor there. I would like to continue serving as that, and I think it makes sense to have me continue doing that because I recently got elected to the executive committee for MRPC. So that's helping
Great.
us establish some leverage there. So unless anybody is super excited. Next on the list is the Montechusett Joint Transportation Committee, the MJTC. The MJTC is a planning advisory group established under a bunch of agreements between the Regional Planning Agency and the Department of Transportation. It's an advisory committee to the Metropolitan Alphabet Soup Committee. But it's important because we get a lot of, there's opportunities for a lot of grant funding from that. Like the project that's currently going on Route 68 started out as a discussion at that committee 5 years ago. So it's important that somebody goes to it. Erica is currently our appointee to it. Don't know if you feel passionate about it, if you wanna open that up to discussion, or if anybody else feels passionate.
If nobody else wants to do it, I can do it. It is a tough, because I work, that's a tough meeting to make, but it's doable. But if anybody else wanted it, I would,
I
that's
wouldn't mind
fine.
doing it, but I work, I can't attend them, I can't do that.
So the challenge with it is their meetings are scheduled to be the second Wednesday of every month at 2:30, but they move them around all the time, which creates a little bit of an issue. I don't know, Peter, if you are interested in taking on,
I'm tied up on Tuesdays,
That's when.
this is Wednesdays.
Wednesdays too.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and this is.
In the afternoon
spaghetti.
especially.
Yeah.
And these are, this is a challenging one. It's challenging for a bunch of reasons. It's, the call itself is challenging because they put it at times. It's also challenging because they are the driest thing you can imagine. But the other thing that comes up with that is often the most important things are hidden in the most boring of places. And this is 100% an example of that. Because meanwhile, through all the just kind of droning on about, here's what's going on with MART and blah, 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 blah. Anybody want a $5 million grant for sidewalks? Blah, 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 blah. And then like, wait, did they just?
Gold nuggets.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that comes up with that, so it just requires somebody who can go and actively listen. Like, you don't have to participate, you don't even get I think you might get a vote on it at an advisory level, but it's really an active listening job for somebody to just have their ears perk up whenever there's money for Hubbardston.
How long are these meetings typically?
They're about an hour,
Yeah.
hour and a half. They try to move them pretty quick.
I see.
Sounds pretty slow.
We're under.
They're virtual.
Online.
They're all
Zoom.
all of the MRPC meetings except for the commission meetings, which are gonna go back to in person at some point. But everything else is virtual because when they were in person, they were never able to get a quorum.
If it's virtual, I can do it. I babysit my kids, my
Okay.
grandkids.
Yeah, I would, if you're willing to do it, I don't think anyone's gonna talk you out of it.
I
And-
think with your finance background, you will hear the dollar signs when they pop up.
I can take it.
They
Okay.
do send out a lot of material beforehand too, that you can
Yeah.
look at first.
But yeah, it's, the important role is just listening for money for Hubbardston.
Okay.
Alright, so we'll just vote all of this like a consent agenda at the end, if that works for everybody. So let's put Peter's name next to that one. The next one is CPC, Community Preservation Committee. The CPC is charged to review all the applications for CPA projects and refer projects to the town meeting for funding approval. For 2022, it was Francois. The CPC committee meets when needed formally, usually around town meetings to discuss applications, and typically meets less than 6 times per year. They're most active from December to May, mirroring the budget season. So Francois, would you like to hang on, and is there anybody who is particularly passionate about it?
I'm willing to take this on, as a matter of fact, so unless there's anybody who would like to,
Awesome.
Bill?
No,
on that?
No, thank you.
Alright, so the next one is Capital Improvement Planning Committee, which is submit capital plan annually to the town administrator, who reviews it and forwards it to the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee with recommendations. In 2022, this was Francois. This is separate and distinct from the public safety building.
Correct.
Now, Katie, do we have an ex officio appointment to the public safety?
Pretty sure planning was on there.
All right. Do you know if somebody got appointed as an individual for that, or if we just have an ex officio spot?
You have a spot.
Okay.
You people have to pick your own.
Okay,
Do
so.
we know when those are taking place?
All right,
I
so.
don't think that anything's been called to order yet.
I do it, but if it's during the day, I can't.
Okay, so then, yeah, those are two separate things then. So I guess let's just acknowledge that they're two separate things and talk about capital improvement first.
I've been doing it for the last 3 years, and this will be the 4th year. We're happy to continue that.
I'm good with that.
You.
Anybody else? All right, so Francois for capital improvement. Now, the next one is the ex officio appointment to the public safety building. I have no idea what the meeting schedule is gonna be, but it's gonna be a meaningful, I imagine it's gonna be a hurry up and wait appointment where there'll be periods of time where there's significant work to do, and then there'll be long periods of time where there's absolutely nothing happening.
Correct.
And it's gonna be pretty important for us to make sure we have somebody to it.
Yeah.
So, who would like to be the ex officio representative to that?
I am willing, as long as it's not a conflict for me, because.
Well, that might be the case because of your
Because
role
I'm in the
and your
public
role
safety
too.
building, right, so if it's not a conflict, I'm fine to do it, but if it is.
I had put my hat in for that group, and they have found
Me
other
too.
people, which is fine, so I'm more than happy to participate in that. Is there a conflict of interest with the capital improvement planning, you think? I mean, I don't think so, but
I don't know,
we look at it from a free cash perspective when it's the capital improvement planning.
so I guess to peel back the layers first, with John, I don't believe there is a conflict because it's not a personal,
Gain.
it's not a personal financial gain.
Right.
Because it's not like,
And I'm not gaining anything from it, and I also have a good perspective of what could be useful in the public
Good point.
safety building.
yeah, so if anything, I think there's value to that. I
Mhm.
think maybe we ask Nate to get an opinion
Yeah.
on it. The reason I'm going back to John, and this is as an individual, not as the chair, is I wanna try to spread things out a bit. And right now, Francois, we have you signed up for about 3 things.
No, and that's fine, I just wanted to make sure if there was a conflict of
Right.
interest, that you guys know that there is an interest on my end. But
Okay.
I am very happy to have somebody like yourself with your background and knowledge to be part of that, and I think you can provide a lot of good input, not only from your professional perspective, but also from a planning board point of view.
And I'll be happy to be a backup if there is an issue.
Okay. So we'll put forward John as our recommendation. All right.
Okay.
So we'll add that to the slate for the vote, and then there's ARPA, which I hope never meets again. Anybody?
Jeez, I was gonna sign up for that one, Chris.
Anybody who wants to do it is more than welcome to do it. I did it for 2 years, and I never wanna do it again.
Should be over, right?
Yeah, it should be over, and there shouldn't be a reason it ever has to meet. Do you know if anybody else, Katie, if anyone else sent representatives, or did ex officios to it?
I do not know. The money's kinda all tied up.
Yeah, and I know anything that's left would just be distributed by the select board.
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
So I don't think we need to put anybody on the slate for that, cause the chair over there is, she's tough. Ugh.
You.
No, it's
Oh.
his wife.
Oh. Oh, okay.
The other tough chair.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
We have
so
one
we'll,
here.
we'll skip that one. The next one is the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which is what everybody walked in on when they came in a little bit early. I think that's gonna wind down over the next month or two, and I've been chairing that and just kinda wanna close it out, so I think it would make sense to keep me on for that one unless anybody's super excited about it.
Nope.
It's all yours.
Alright, so that is the slate of ex officios to other committees and commissions. Some of those are recommendations, some of them are formal votes, so can I get a motion from somebody on that slate?
I would like,
For,
go ahead.
and I think the motion is a motion to approve the slate of recommendations and appointments for planning board members and other roles. There we go.
Boom. Who's making it?
I'll make that motion, sir.
Alright, here in a first, do we have a second?
Second it?
Any further discussion? Awesome, calling a vote.
Steiger, aye?
Holman's eye.
Demelia, aye.
Jack, aye.
Monroe, aye.
Okay,
And that carries. We are
that's done.
organized for 2023.
Thank you.
Alright, so moving, well, thank all of you for serving here and for serving in all of those places. I think a lot of people don't realize how much we actually do. Like I had one of my first meetings with Ryan, I actually put down the matrix of all the places where planning board people went and all the different jobs that we do in addition to being on the planning board. And he had never seen it in one place before. I was like, I don't think I ever really had an appreciation of what you guys actually do. Because he didn't realize how many places we were all expected to be. So, yeah, I think it's good to get it all up. Yes?
Yeah, it was amazing, process just happened. All the people agreeing to do extra work and all that stuff, I never heard of such a thing.
Thanks.
Come and join
It's
us.
unbelievable.
Come and
Really.
join us.
And please just state your name for the record.
Well, that's unbelievable, just like, I'll do it.
This isn't really truthful,
Yeah.
we're not, you know.
Yep. And Rick, can you just state your name for the record?
Pardon me? Oh, Rick Green.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so moving down the list, we have minutes. So we have the minutes from May 3rd. Can I get a motion on those and then we'll pull them into discussion?
I'll make that motion.
So motion to accept the May 3rd minutes.
I'll second.
We have a second to accept the May 3rd minutes, discussion and corrections. And I'll hold for a moment because I don't have it open on my computer at the moment to see if I have any notes. All right, anybody have any questions, or we can also hold for another minute if you need to take a little more to look. And were there any any comments that were made in the drive?
Not on this one.
No.
Okay. It's just really rare, there's almost always changes.
No, they're really good.
But Mark, thank you for the excellent work. All right, so here in a first and a second, any further discussion? Calling a vote.
Steiger, aye?
Holman's eye.
Demelia, aye.
Jack, aye.
Monroe, aye, and the May 3rd minutes are accepted. Next on the list is the May 18th minutes for acceptance. I'd like to get a motion on that and then pull them into discussion.
I'd like to make a motion that we review and accept these minutes for May 18th, right?
Yes, May 18th, 2023.
2023.
I'll second that.
All right, here in a first and a second, any discussion or comments?
There was one small little comment that I had made, I don't see the issue anymore, so I'm assuming it has been taken care of. I think the word "that" was.
Was the repeated that? Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't,
And I think you may have taken
change
care
it
of
yet,
it.
but I did see it.
Okay, so if you saw it, you must have made the change to it already. Thank you. That's the only thing that I could find. Everything else was excellent.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion? So here no further discussion, calling a vote.
Steiger, aye?
Holman's eye.
Demalia, aye.
Dak eye.
Monroe, aye. The minutes are accepted. Next on the list is June 7th minutes for acceptance. I'd like to handle them the same way.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I second the motion.
Hearing a first and a second, any discussion or corrections? Anything?
Nope.
Oh, it was these ones that had the extra that.
Then I apologize, so then, yes, there is that one correction that I would like to include,
Okay.
and it's on the minutes for, June 7th.
Okay. So, anything else? So with that said, the vote is on a motion for the, assuming a friendly amendment to the original motion, to approve the corrected minutes.
Yes.
So, hearing that, calling a vote.
Steiger, aye?
Holman's eye.
Demalia, aye.
Dak eye.
And the chair is aye. The minutes are accepted. Alright, so moving into new business. So first on the list, we have an A&R application here from Rick and Joyce Green on Old Westminster Road. So
Never heard of them.
we should have some plans. Rick, can you tell us what you're looking to do?
We're just basically taking a 24-acre piece right here, and we're going to make it to a camp for homeless people.
This is the second one.
So, as long as they're low to moderate income.
No, we're planning to give this to my son-in-law and my daughter. That's all.
That's all?
Alright.
I mean, that's all.
Could have been a bigger piece.
Yeah.
I was hoping
So,
it was gonna take a minute
quick
longer.
quick question, Rick. This plan that you showed here is dividing all the property that you have
No,
into
this
that
piece-
one section?
This
and-
piece of property right now, sorry, it looks like this.
Okay,
And this is a field that we made, so we're keeping that. And we just.
that's
yeah.
the field that is not gonna be part of that section, so
Right.
these are then gonna be two separate.
Right,
Okay,
this is
okay,
gonna
thank
go,
you.
with the rest, this field is, well, we also
Yep.
own this half,
Okay.
so we're just keeping the field together.
So you're dividing those two pieces of property into two.
Right.
Thank you.
That's the area the windstorm took all the timber out, right?
Right.
Little
After
tornado.
he cleared it.
F0.
Alright, so for the benefit of the public, what we're here talking about is accepting an A&R because an A&R being approval not required. However, we still approve it, just not like that. So we use a checklist for the purpose of doing this, so we just run down the checklist. So,
You may wanna point out to these things as he asks for them.
yep, or just anyone who's near it. And Mark, did you have a chance to run through the plan with the checklist ahead of time?
No.
Okay, so first on the list is property boundaries and North Point date and scale.
Yep.
Yes. There's a scale. There's the property lines all identified.
Scales are on the bottom.
Yep, there it is.
And there's a,
North. Yep.
Name of record owner, name of registered land surveyor, and the Worcester County Register of Deeds book and page reference of conveyance to record owners.
I believe all that's right here.
Yep, and then the record owners look like they're there, but my eyes aren't that good.
Yep.
Okay. Area of each lot,
Yes, area 8.19
Yeah,
acres,
also
and
here,
this
right?
is 22.67.
And you have them up here?
No, these are just zoning requirements here.
Oh, I see.
This,
Yep.
this is 24.91 acres, and that's 8.19 acres.
Sufficient data to determine the location, direction, and length of every street, and way line, lot line, boundary line, monuments, or references necessary to establish these lines on the ground. Obviously. We just gonna have to take the word that they're reflected there.
Mhm. Do you see them?
Where practical, boundary lines of contiguous or adjacent land and names of the owners thereof, as determined from the most recent tax list.
They are also indicated, yes.
Alright, location of all permanent monuments properly identified. Kind of have to take your surveyor's opinion on that.
Yeah, yes.
Location, names, and present widths of non-public private ways abutting the property. And I believe you just have public ways abutting the property, so. Suitable space to record the endorsement of the board that approval is not required and that the signatures, and the signatures of a member of the board.
Over there.
There's the space. Zoning classification and location of any zoning district boundaries that may lie within the locus of the plan. Yeah, I thought I saw that it was already there. In the case of the creation of a new lot, the remaining land and frontage of and in the ownership of the applicant shall be shown. So, in the creation of a new lot, the remaining land area and frontage should be shown. Is it?
That's the first thing you said tonight that I didn't understand. That's sentence.
Yeah, so,
It's
The
just to
frontage
show
of
that you're
that-
not leaving yourself with a non-conforming.
Yeah, the frontage of that lot is not changing. And it does show that we own a contiguous piece with 200 feet of frontage.
okay. Does that make sense? Cause it is a huge lot, but I don't know that that's expressly DeMarc and Bill on this, if you guys have any.
So this is the leftover lot. It's going to be,
Yeah, I guess.
doesn't have any frontage, right? So this is
Well,
the,
and
this is the
real-
frontage.
Well, Commonwealth and Mass, that I don't think matters. Really, that's the one that I was curious about. It's there.
It's to be
So,
combined with other
yeah.
land, so
Right,
the
so if it's
frontage will be
combined,
the
it's
frontage
combined
of
like
this.
this one here, with
Yeah.
this one here. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Really, that's what I was questioning to
Yep.
make sure what's there.
Right, it's one big
Okay.
hayfield right now.
Okay.
You keep it that, like a hayfield and not a solar farm or
Yep.
a hemp farm or something.
Well, and ultimately, I was just curious on whether that note was there, because I know not the whole parcel appeared on the map because it's huge, but the note's there, so. Then, location of all existing buildings, including setback, inside and rear yard designations, there aren't any buildings.
No buildings.
Alright. And then 12, location and area of any wetlands on the lots being created by the plan, including the lot being created by the remaining land, in lieu of delineating the wetlands on the remaining land. The applicant may provide written certification from the surveyor or professional engineer who prepared the plan that the remaining parcel of land contains the minimum required upland area required under the zoning bylaw. I did see wetlands delineated on that, so.
Right, this particular lot is 24.91 acres total and 22.67 acres is upland. And this one, there's no wetlands on this parcel.
Alright. Awesome, so it appears to me that all of the criteria are met. I don't know if anybody else has any questions or concerns. Do we have to do a vote on these, or do we just sign them? We do a vote, alright.
Yes.
So let's have a motion to accept the A&R.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Here in a first and a second, any further discussion?
Just a technicality, the authorized signatures have yet to be prepared and approved by, what is the process for the approved signatures, authorized signatures we have to go through today? The WRODs, right?
Yeah,
Does that have to
the
happen
board,
bef-
the board membership has not changed.
Yeah, I understand that, so there's no change there, and therefore we can go ahead and sign it without any issues?
Yeah, you're gonna be signing tonight the form to send into the registry.
Gotcha, okay,
But
so we
but
just
we
gotta make
actually
sure
already
that
have valid signatures for everybody here, except for Peter.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, so first, second, any further discussion? Alright, hearing no discussion, calling the vote.
Steiger, aye.
Holman's eye.
Denali, aye.
Dak eye.
And Monroe, aye. So now we need to sign. So. And do we have anybody here from Royal Sun?
Nope.
Haven't seen anybody.
The one next to the bus company, in the back.
That's on the left side. This was from.
Just the last two, right?
Yeah, two Mylar and one paper.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyway.
Congrats on being a granddad.
Oh, yes, thank you.
You're the father. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hi. Rick Green, I never met you.
John.
Yeah, you're in Brent?
Hi, Erica Dak.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Again.
Let's see.
They will move there, so you will all day. The tool.
Thanks, Mark.
Oh, yeah, so just for clarification, for Malone Road, you're still sitting on the permit until the meeting or whenever it gets
Yes,
all
I
resolved.
think so. We didn't actually talk about that, but I said it's probably the first time that we will be able to put together, if you can get the work done. So, that's the way we left it.
So do we take
So
the
just-
Mylar and record it, or
Yeah.
how does that happen?
Yep, yeah, you take Mylar.
So I don't know if you'll continue to go or not.
Oh, it's one of, I always do that.
Had it been a baby girl, would he have got more acreage?
A dowry, you mean? To throw some cows in and stuff.
No comment.
I don't know, that stuff doesn't happen these days, I don't think.
You never know.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Did you get John's signature?
What?
Send him out yet?
Yes,
John,
sir.
yeah, John.
Oh,
He's here.
you were completely eclipsed by Bill and Francois. I thought you gave us
Thought I
the
just
Irish
left.
goodbye.
You didn't say anything, just like I'm out.
It's our big heads. It's our big heads.
Having solved a lot of things, remember the clips.
My apologies.
Like the genie and.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
Alright, so moving next down the list, under new business is Royal Sun Farm, we have 2 items. So we keep kicking this down the road. Honestly, I just need them to send in some kind of authorized agent to just talk to us,
Sure.
because historically, we have looked at these things as minor engineering changes, but I would just like somebody to come in on the record and explain to us what they're doing, so we decide if it's gonna be a minor engineering change.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's too much to ask. So, Mr. Schmidt, please just send a representative to one of our meetings, and we would be happy to take a look at this with you. Other than that, I don't have anything else to add to that unless, cause I don't wanna take this under discussion without them sending a representative.
I
And
agree.
even though it should be simple and easy, we just need somebody to show up. So,
Susan.
Mark, can you also send a letter to them, to that fact? I know you've sent them some email correspondence.
Yeah.
And just, I wanna work with them, but simultaneously, I'm displeased that they're not just sending someone to our meeting, and this is the third time they've been on the agenda and it's not worked out for something that's really pretty perfunctory, most likely. But we just need to talk to them to make sure that that's the case. All right, so, moving on, administrative matters, authorized signature for the Worcester Registry of Deeds.
So, just put your signature in the middle column there of the upper section. I'll fill in all the rest later. Here, just signature. Well,
Just signature? Yeah.
yeah, actually, it doesn't matter.
You'll decipher what the signatures are.
It's better if I don't
May I
have to
borrow
write
your pen
anything.
because
Absolutely.
I don't have one with me. Right there.
So while that's getting passed around, the next thing is the invoice approval process.
Anybody pass it on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Official.
So,
Here's your Wellesley College of Age, Council
on Aging.
Oh.
It's fancy. They have nice pens. Invoice approval process. This was a request from Mark to put on the agenda that I wholeheartedly agree with. Because historically, any invoice that's come up in front of the planning board, our process has been to just have a full vote on that. And that's led to some issues for payment and publication where we've had to do a little bit of a shell game because although we had the money, we couldn't actually pay it and our account for publishing notice was put on hold because of other things, and the office ended up having to engage in a little bit of a shell game. So, Mark, could you talk to that a little bit and more artfully than I did?
Yeah, some of this stuff we got backed up with meetings that didn't happen or meetings that weren't having normal business items. So specifically for advertising, our account got suspended for late payment. So, for instance, for the balloon test, we had to place the ad with the Conservation Commission's account because that was live.
Oh.
So, anyway, what I would like to see is that, particularly when there's a set amount of an expenditure, that you approve it at the time that it's incurred, not when the invoice comes in a month later, and put your signatures on that. So, anytime we have something like an advertising invoice, I'll have a confirmation earlier on in the process of exactly the amount. I'll bring it to you, you vote on it, and that's your approval. When it comes time to approve the invoice, we can either have me just sign off on it administratively, or worst case, have the chair sign off on it on your behalf. But we need to, if we wait for invoices to roll in, we're often too late.
Yeah, specifically advertising is where it's the problem. And it's not that we didn't have money from the applicant, and it's not that we didn't have money, it's just with the way the approval process works. Because of the outstanding invoice for something else, there was potentially gonna be a delay that was gonna interfere with the process. And like we know, especially with anything where the TCA is implicated, a week or two difference can be a real big difference. So, I wanted to open it up for discussion. I suggest that we do modify the process to the extent that we can, specifically for advertising invoices. Like I know a large project, like if we have a large project with Places Associates, we probably should have that for board approval and discussion. But for something that is comparatively de minimis, like $300 advertising, and for that, the price is what the price is. Like you have to advertise in the paper of record. It's not like we have any real discretion.
Is there any way we can allow Mark just to take care of it and we vote it at our next meeting? Is that legal?
I'm not
That's what I do on other boards I want. We just approve it in the next month meeting, we approve it all.
Just to make it, just for internal control purposes, I'd recommend making it a two-step process.
Okay.
I would have me sign off on what Mark generates.
Oh, no, that's
Or
fine, you're in here all the time with him, but if we don't have a meeting for whatever reason, it goes on too long,
Yeah.
If we can just get it approved that level, when we have our next meeting, then we vote on it. Would that be okay?
It seems a little backwards. I mean,
Well, we can
Or-
approve the expenses as a board, cause we know they're coming, so if we know there's gonna be an advertising expense, even though we haven't yet received the invoice, we could just say, and I don't even think this is an administrative rule, I just say as a matter of process,
Yes.
that will now say, hey, there's gonna be advertising associated with this. The advertising is not going to likely exceed $300. Can we approve that in advance, and we'll just have to take the vote, that would take care of
And
it.
that way it makes it easy for you, you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it.
yeah. I would definitely prefer to do it in that sequence.
Yeah, 'cause
Rather
ultimately-
than an after the fact vote.
Yeah, because ultimately the board still has the authority, but I think that would just make it a smoother process for everyone.
Right.
And we just need to make that be reflected in, what we do for our form. Well, how do we make sure this decision lives on, and that we remember this? I mean, it is a
Adopt the
challenge.
policy.
Yeah. Yeah, write a policy, put it in the book. Yeah. So if that makes sense to everybody,
Yes.
I don't even think we need a vote for it. Okay, yeah, let's do that way going forward.
Tonight, we have a specific expense that you can,
And we have a specific expense we need to approve for tonight, so we have
which actually is the balloon test advertisement.
Yep, we have the advertisement to the Gardner News for the balloon test, which is an expense of $118.35. There's money in the account for the applicant, and we just need to approve that expense.
I make a motion, we approve the expense.
I'll second that.
Here in a first and a second, any discussion?
Point of order, Mr. Devalli is conflicted on this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I
Thank
should-
you.
I can't vote on that.
I'll make that motion, sir.
I will
Yep.
second that motion.
Give your motion.
Yeah.
Here in a first and a second, any further discussion?
Steiger, oh, sorry, go ahead. Something on there.
All right, calling a vote.
Steiger, aye?
Woman's eye.
I abstain.
Jack, aye.
And the chair is aye, the expense is approved. Thank you for that. All right, so that is the end of that. So, we are gonna move towards the public hearing, so.
And I will recuse myself.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming.
I'm gonna relocate.
By the way, we do have two remote attendees tonight. We've got Shayna Gallinat for Industrial Tower, and we've got Mike Umano. We don't know. Is he with you?
Mike is also,
Okay.
yeah, he's for industrial tower.
Okay. All right.
Mark, could you make him a panelist as well?
Sure.
All right, I'm suffering from Tyler Brain. We need a motion to reopen the public hearing on that, right? No,
You're gonna
we
make
just
the
call it to
motion,
order.
right?
No, we
Yeah,
just-
you haven't moved it, no.
Okay, we just call it, so calling back to order, the public hearing continuation for the special permit application for the construction of a 145-foot communications tower, followed by Industrial Tower and Wireless LLC. The property is located at Accessor Map 3, Lot 189, behind 243 Gardner Road. Plans have been viewable at the town clerk's office during regular business hours and through the planning board website where the entire application has been viewable. All right, so my plan for this is, I guess first, could the applicant give us an update on the balloon test and anything else that's happened? And then we're gonna have Mr. Murray from Places Associates just walk us through his review of the application.
Is it okay if I sit?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a PowerPoint presentation too to go through the load test process. You know the easiest way to do that, Mark? Do you want?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen so they can see it, Shayna and such can see it. Do you wanna start with that?
Sure, yeah, please.
Forward and backward.
Oh, great. So, good evening. My name is Kevin Delaney, and I'm the Engineering and Regulatory Compliance Manager for Industrial Tower and Wireless. With me tonight is Kevin Fadden, who's a Site Acquisition Specialist, Shana Gallinet, who you met last time, who's our consultant, and Mike Umano, who is on Zoom as well, who's the President of Industrial. So we have a PowerPoint presentation prepared for the balloon test. At our last meeting, we had decided that the balloon test would be on June 21st at 6:30 a.m. And it was advertised, as already has come up, and we also notified the entire town by mailing. So it was 1,884 mailings that went out to residential properties, commercial properties, and PO boxes. So I think everyone got notified. We hired an independent company to do the balloon test. They're a company called Virtual Site Solutions, who conducted the test. And so the balloon was up at 6:30 a.m. that day, and it flew until 1:30.
And just for clarification, that was for the public, that was a time range that was requested by the planning board because of feedback that was given by the townsfolk to the last test, that we did not do it early enough where people had a chance to see it before work. So we tried to set a time there where it was gonna be light out, but not too windy, and before people had to go to work and school, so. Thank you.
And we were fortunate that day. The weather was good, the winds were light, so it was a successful balloon test. So the map that you see before you now is basically the area of the balloon test. The yellow dot in the middle is where the balloon was flown from. It was flown up to the level of the height of the tower proposed, which was 145 feet. And the balloon itself was 3.5 feet in diameter. The yellow circle around the center, yellow star, is a 1 mile radius, just for a point of view. So some of these pictures are going to be in Gardner, which you may or may not care about, and some of them are in Hubbardston. We just basically did a 1 mile radius to see where it was visible from. Now, the company that does this, they have software that says potential areas where it might be visible, and their software bases that on topography, basically, but it doesn't take into account vegetation and trees. So they don't know till they get there if it's visible or not, but they know that these locations on the map were potential spots where it is. So it was, just to summarize, it was really only visible in one location in this entire 1 mile radius. And that's the green dot where you see the white arrow pointed to, which is basically on Gardner Road at the entrance to the driveway. And so this is the picture of the balloon and its visibility from that point. It's 0.15 miles away from the site. And you can see the red balloon. I don't know, does this have a red pointer on it, Mark, or?
It does. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the TV screen or not.
Probably not. But you can everybody see the red balloon?
I can see it, yeah.
Okay. So that's the visibility from that point. And then our next slide is just a superimposed tower and what it would be, how it would be visible from that point. So I'll just go back and forth just so you can see that. There's the tower, there's the balloon. Next to location 2, which you see the white arrow, which is just south, basically due south of our proposed site. It's 0.25 miles away, looking in the direction of the site, and it was not visible. And location 3, as you can see where the white arrow is, that's located 0.26 miles away on Route 68, and it wasn't visible. And that's that location looking in the direction of the balloon. And now we're into location 4, and I can go through this faster if you want me to, because basically all these 18 locations, not one of them it's visible. So if you want, I can just kind of go through the presentation faster. I think you get the gist of it. But you can follow the white arrow and see the different locations where they flew the balloon, and again, it wasn't visible.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Going back to the numbers that you have there, which ones are in Hubbardston?
Yep, so it's number 1, obviously, number 2, number 8, and number 14. And number 3 is also in Hubbardston. So basically everything just south of, point to it for you. basically all the sites that are south at this point are Hubbardston.
Thank you.
Yep. So again, location 7, not visible. Oop. Did we pop out of the presentation? Okay, thank you. Location 8, not visible. Location 9, it's not visible. Again, you can see these are clearings, that's why they were chosen. Location 10, not visible. Location 11, not visible. Location 12, not visible. And just so you know, the order that this goes in, that I'm going through these, is the distance from the site. So it's the further you go out in that mile radius is how we choose to show you which picture next. Location 13, not visible. Location 14, not visible. Location 15, not visible. 16, not visible. 17, not visible.
So,
And that's it for the balloon test.
so you mentioned a computer simulation based upon topography.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I didn't think about it until the morning of the balloon test, but I thought of one place where it probably is visible, which would be the top of that knoll on 57 Pitcherville Road. I
Okay.
don't know if you have anything that showed whether it would be or wouldn't be visible from there.
Is that over a mile away?
It is it I don't
It
know
would
that
be
it is, by
because
the way the
Pitt-
crow flies. Can you
If
go back
you
to the
look at where-
circle?
It's
see where-
fairly close, I think.
There's the
So-
sand
You
pit.
see where those panels are? The
See
solar
those
panels?
solar arrays?
Yep.
There's high ground slightly to the left of that.
Okay.
Where there's, and whether or not this is even something we're concerned about, I just wanna make sure we're getting everything
Yeah, so
out into the record, because that land was recently purchased for, someone who is proposing to put in, some housing.
okay. Yeah, I mean, it is outside the mile, so we didn't, take any pictures from that location. A mile away is a good distance, so if you can see it, you saw what it looked like when it was literally
It's also not currently a public way.
Yeah, that also would create an issue for you because it's private
Oh, okay, so we wouldn't have
property
been able to get in
currently.
there anyways. But you saw what it looked at 0.15 miles away, so at a mile away, you're
Yeah.
not gonna be able to really see it well with the naked eye, if at all. If that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think there's actually, where it says Hubbardston State Forest there, I think there's actually significant enough rise there on the back of the sand pit where you probably can't
Trees,
see it.
yeah.
For where, at least in the places where they're looking to put housing. But I just wanted to make sure that that's something that's contemplated and gets out on the record here, so.
Okay. At the last meeting, it was requested of us by the board to provide like a distance from the closest residential homes in the area, in the basic vicinity, so that's what this next slide shows you. The closest house, which is kind of due east of our proposed tower, is 705 feet away. And then you can see between the other properties, they're anywhere between, after 705, the next closest is 726 feet away, and the furthest site is 991 feet away. So I just wanted to provide that for the board, because they did ask that. So, did you want me to address, because I did receive the consultant's report, and I was prepared to address those points, but I don't know if you had preferred to hear from him first, or?
Let's go through those from the consultant side first.
Okay, so that concludes what we have so far of the PowerPoint presentation, and I have more to address some of the consultant's concerns after he's done with his presentation.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, Mr. Murray. So just for the purpose of the public, Mr. Murray is from Places Associate. They are a consultant that works on behalf of the planning board. When we have complex issues such as this, such as reviewing special permit applications. So he is working on behalf of the board and the town.
Good evening.
Thanks for joining us.
Sure. There are a lot of wrinkles to this one, because of the zoning bylaw and the conflicts, potential conflicts in the zoning bylaw. So I'll just go through my letter and try and keep it short and sweet. The first thing I looked at when we got the application is I looked at the record plans on file at the Registry of Deeds. And when this backlot was created, it was created with a note that says this backlot is to be combined and annexed with the front lot to form a single lot because this is non-compliant with zoning. And using the merger doctrine, which is common law in Massachusetts, if you create a non-compliant lot and you have an adjacent lot owned by the same people, they become merged and they're considered a single lot. So as far as zoning is concerned, these are all now one lot, which is not necessarily a problem, but zoning says section 5.3A1, 1 to 5, 5.6, that you can only have one building on a lot, other than unique uses that are allowed in the zoning bylaw.
Can we ask questions as we go along here?
Sure. Especially from the board.
I just wanted to confirm the wording that you're using on that, which is one building per lot. That's, you make references of 5.6. The bylaw, when I read it, and obviously there's been problems with making sure that we have up-to-date bylaws on our site. I read not more than one principal building.
Not more than one structure,
No.
other than an accessory structure.
No, it says.
Shall be erected on a single lot.
Section 5.6 says not more than one principal building shall be erected on the lot unless each such building is served by an access determined by the building inspector after consultation with the planning board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The question I'm bringing up is it important to note the wording one principal building, and what does that imply?
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay, thank you.
So what the bylaw says is if you propose more than one principal building on a lot and you have the capability of subdividing it so that they can conform to zoning and you can prove that to either the building inspector or the planning board, that's what section 5.6 says. So it is possible, I don't know how much frontage the Demalia front lot has, it is possible that if they can come up with 400 feet of frontage, they have more than enough land area, they may be able to prove to the satisfaction of this board and building inspector that you can create a separate lot and it would go on. Then the other part of this argument is a cell tower considered an accessory use? Because it does say no more than one principal building shall be located on a lot except for accessory structures.
Yeah, I think that's a big part, well, all of these have challenges.
Yes, they do.
because there's different lenses and different sets of analysis to apply to it. And ultimately, I think we need to go with the path that makes the most sense. So, not specifically related to this, but related to some of the other issues, I reached out for an opinion from town council. I did not yet get clarification on whether or not that was privileged, so I didn't yet send it to the board, but I can say that a good part of what was provided by town council is that there is some flexibility to what is ordinarily the board's authority because of the Telephone Communications Act. And that if we were in a situation where, and the reason I bring this up is because it means that there's multiple avenues. So there's the avenue of, well, to the board's satisfaction and the building commissioner's satisfaction if that works out. And then if that doesn't work out, there's the separate set of analysis that would come under the TCA, which would then be, okay, have they documented that this is an area where there's a gap of coverage? Have they documented that there isn't an otherwise an otherwise available property that works under the, just call it regulatory framework for the moment, that would fill that existing gap? So I just wanted to add that as a comment because we get into a place where there's a whole bunch of parallel reasoning for looking at a lot of the stuff. And I should have caught Nate before the meeting, because Nate holds privilege for communications with town council, so, I'm gonna chase him down and hopefully get that released to the board and to places, and when that happens, it'll become a public record, so.
One of the things I did forget to mention is the merger lot therefore makes the certified list of abutters not complete, because there is one entity that was not on that list because it's 300 feet from the parcel, that the T-shaped parcel, not the entire parcel. So I did submit the assessor's sheet.
We sent notice after that about it last week.
We saw that in the documents that you put in the folder.
I didn't see that.
So, I just wanna make sure that I'm keeping a running tally of outstanding issues as we're going, so the number of structures is still
And whether that a cell tower can be considered an accessory structure.
Is it an accessory? And if not, is TCA criteria met?
And then you have the other option of simply proving that they have the ability to create a conforming lot.
Can I ask another quick question to our consultant?
Absolutely.
Out of curiosity, when we were doing the Vertex, the property that Vertex proposed their tower on, did that have any other buildings?
Yeah,
That-
it
that
was the
lot.
farm.
Sorry?
It was the farm, so the farm
But
farm existed, plus they have a barn, which is an accessory use, so yeah, that had to.
Yeah, it was the actual lot, so it was 10.5 acres, and the actual frontage for that was on Main Street.
But
So-
there's a principal dwelling there, right?
Correct.
So that would have also had the same situation and
Yep.
issues as a result of this here.
Yeah, but they went to the zoning board of appeals.
And that particular,
Not on that issue.
I don't know. if
I don't think
would-
that
Yeah,
issue
they
is.
didn't go to the ZBA on that issue,
No,
but.
exactly.
They were in the overlay.
Yeah, but the ZBA had run out their time clock anyway, so all of
Yeah.
those issues got mooted, so.
Yeah. But for all intents and purposes, Vertex has the same, has the same situation.
Yep.
Okay. So we have some precedent
Yeah,
to
that
consider.
is an interesting note.
I just note that zoning requires parking, and I think this is a pretty easy fix. They got plenty of space within their easement to show a couple parking spaces.
Can I ask another question on that one? Under the, and this is really more a comment for us. And you rightly so, mentioned that list. And it indicates how many parking lots must exist for a
Defined
commercial, et cetera. I don't think there's anything in there to really specify how a structure like that, or which one would it fit in, is my question.
So.
Or should we, or if I may just finish my question, my point here is, or do we as a board have to look at the bylaw again and potentially fix it?
No.
Okay.
So there is a fix in the bylaw, because the bylaw says if the zoning enforcement officer can't make a determination, the determination defaults to you for the number of required spaces.
Gotcha, okay.
Because really for that use, what do you need, 2 parking spaces at the base of the tower?
I'm just
Well,
saying
it's-
zoning requires parking,
Yep.
period.
Yeah.
It's not a, I don't want it, it requires parking. If the building inspector doesn't wanna say how many spaces, you get to make the call.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an unattended facility that's visited once a month,
Right.
so, yeah, the building commissioner,
It's a very picky point.
yeah.
Hey.
That's
Yeah.
me, right?
I'd rather have it up front.
I mean, yeah, well, and I also think it's important to note to everybody, to the board and to the applicant, that, it's important to be picky on stuff like this, because our decisions need to be defensible, especially on anything related to telephone communications. So not having loose threads like that are helpful, especially when we're in the situation that we're in, where we have perhaps a slightly outdated wireless communications bylaw, where complexity can come up in places where it's not expected. So competing business interests, who knows who's gonna be upset with whatever decision. So it's important that we are picky on some of that stuff, and that not everything needs to be a barrier, but we just need to make sure we have a good defensible decision either way. So, thank you.
Another very picky technical lot coverage. The applicant uses 5.33 acres as the area of the lot, which is the parcel, not the entire Demalia lot, so that just needs a simple correction. Then we went through other parts of the zoning bylaw. Our concern, we addressed the fact that the applicant is asking for waivers to the zoning bylaw, and this board does not have a whole lot of latitude in granting waivers under the zoning bylaw. That's not your purview, that's the zoning board of appeals. And we point those out, and I'll point those out when we get to them. Under Article 8, environmental and community impact analysis, and all of these things that I'm gonna talk about coming up, we only highlighted the ones that we wanted to talk about. Everything else that's not addressed, we feel has been addressed adequately. Under water pollution, they did not submit a stormwater analysis or a stormwater narrative prepared by a professional registered engineer. They do have stormwater designs presented on the plan, but it doesn't explain how they're meeting stormwater qualities or environmental regulations. It is a really pragmatic thing. It's a tower surrounded by crushed stone on the top of a hill. Maybe a narrative is more than sufficient as opposed to detailed engineering calculations, but I leave that to the applicant. The applicant notes that they've contacted Mass Fisheries and Wildlife. We went through Mass GIS and they do not have endangered species. They note that they don't need a septic system, and as we've done in the past, we'd like them to note on the design plans that they must provide potable water and portable sanitary facilities during construction. Existing neighborhood land use. On the previous application, we got a TOW error assessment, which is an identification through the FAA. It's a casual identification that there's no obstacle to aviation, and this tower is darn close to the Gardner Airport.
So we did get an updated document.
Let me give you an update on that.
Oh, okay.
They got their FAA letter. Lighting is gonna be required.
Oh, okay, good, well, we'll get to that too.
So I actually found that confusing in the letter, because the letter said that there's no hazard to navigation, and then said lighting requirements under whatever will apply, but I didn't have a chance to go and actually look at the regulations, so it just essentially said that lighting section existed, so I'm looking forward to hearing from the applicant on that. So we need some help understanding that one.
Okay, and so the lighting issue, I was concerned that you wouldn't get a response, and then is lighting a significant issue for the board if it's an add-on? Again, we talked about parking spaces and we talked about lighting. They, in their cost-benefit analysis under the environmental and community impact, they make the statement the proposed facility will not have any adverse impact on the values of land and building in the neighborhood. And we've lived that story with applicants coming in with real estate agents and making a counterclaim. So I'd like to see some sort of factual assessment, scholarly article or something along those lines that supports that statement, that's all.
Okay, that seems reasonable, cause I know they're out there and they exist, so it seems like it should be easy to provide that.
We do know that, yep. Under site plan review, our only comment is that the plans are not stamped appropriately. The base plan is stamped by a registered land surveyor, which is fine, but the design plan should be stamped by a registered professional engineer. And then we get into some of the, what I will call mucky parts of our bylaw. The applicant submitted a letter from the building commissioner that states they need a special permit for work in the agricultural district. And then the zoning bylaw requires, it states quite clearly, where is it? 18.4.2, subsequent, all communication facilities shall be located in the wireless communications overlay district. So, I agree with the building inspector that it clearly says special permit, allowable by special permit in the residential agricultural district, but then the zoning bylaw goes on to clarify, and it's pretty straightforward in plain language, that it refines and narrows where a cell tower can be. So I find that citation to be kind of problematic for the planning board, and I don't know how you're gonna
Right, so just
resolve
to
that.
pause there for a moment, so I did ask town council for an opinion on that. And that is the opinion that I need to talk to Nate and her to make sure that it is public to release, but the summary, which I certainly can share, is that it was her position that we did have the authority under 4.2, the way it was written, and that if we didn't, we would have the authority under the TCA. And that the TCA criteria would likely be met for this project. But I will, she did issue an email on it, and she also included her formal written opinion that was produced on the Vertex project, substantiating her research on it. So,
Did she refer it to the zoning board of appeals?
well, that's also where things got mucky, because the ZBA had significant procedural problems,
Yeah.
because they're not as well supported as we are. So those procedural issues made it so some of that didn't get, I don't know, Bill, do you know if the memo ever got distributed at the board? Because if you know if that
I
memo got
wasn't
distributed.
allowed to be at that, involved in
Oh,
that,
so
because I was.
you were in a butter.
He was refused the whole thing.
And I knew about that, but I couldn't be there the whole process, I was,
Yeah.
because I'm in the butter, so.
Katie,
We,
do
Just
you
like I
know
couldn't
if the
attend
memo
this.
ever got distributed
No
and
idea.
privilege got waived?
No idea.
Okay,
I
well,
haven't heard it.
But the other part of that is the applicant's, legal counsel should weigh in on this as well.
yes, yeah, they absolutely should. But I just wanted to make sure that we got out that there are competing opinions on this, and that under what I'll call the traditional reading, what Bill is saying is absolutely is correct, but TCA changes things sometimes.
I don't do TCA. Again, another conflict, which I think that this board has already dealt with. The town prefers that all communication facilities be located on existing structures. Then it goes on to say that if compliance with communications facilities not located on existing structures, then they must be of the monopole type. So again,
We have the precedent with Vertex, if I
Right.
may state that it's a
Yeah.
lattice.
Yeah, because there was another section that did reference lattice
site.
construction.
It is allowed in the general bylaw,
Yeah.
or in the wireless bylaw, lattice type are allowed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and-
referred to both ways.
And-
Right, exactly.
And that was the reasoning of the whether it was a waiver or specific finding in that permit,
It was
was
a
that
finding,
it was ambiguous in the bylaw, and the applicant in that situation presented compelling evidence that that it was going to be an economic hardship because it was not as easily upgradable in the future, and there were some restrictions on the type of equipment that can go on a monopole as opposed to a lattice that you can just bolt anything to. Well, see if the applicant has that same kind of information to present us with. All right, continue please.
Yep. The applicant does request multiple waivers, and under Article 18, Section 18(4)D and 4.E, it clearly states where you may grant waivers under the wireless communications article, and one is relating to the fall zone and the other is relating to the offset for a municipal water supply. So a waiver request by the applicant for any part, in my reading, any part of the wireless bylaw needs to go to the zoning board of appeals, which I think town council has already touched upon. Again, another conflict in our bylaw, fencing is required by the bylaws to be
Can I-
8-foot tall wooden fence.
Can I just go back on this here on the waivers? Are any of these two waivers applicable in this particular project though?
No.
Okay, so.
No.
Right, so asking for a waiver is not appropriate under Article 18.
Gotcha.
Except
For these,
town
so-
council
okay, so your
has-
point, your
has
point,
said.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they're not applicable, we shouldn't even be asking for the waiver, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Thank you.
unless TCA overrides.
Okay.
Yeah, because ultimately there are, I think we identified in our first meeting, there were 4 places where there were specific problems with, not necessarily problems with the project or problems with our bylaws, but places where they interacted in curious ways.
Right.
The lattice tower being one of them, the uses being one of them. I actually did not see the second structure issue, so I didn't ask for an opinion on that, and I hadn't spent any time looking into it. But Francois raises an interesting point that we kind of already set a precedent on that we're gonna have to think about. There was another one too, so lattice, the use,
Fencing, which he's just
Yeah,
about to get to.
the fencing, yeah.
Fencing. So the fencing, it's very explicit in the zoning bylaw, 8-foot tall wood stockade fencing. The applicant's proposing an 8-foot tall chain link fence and ask for a waiver from the regulation. But this section of the bylaw, Article 18, describes a security barrier as a locked impenetrable wall, fence, or berm that completely seals the area from unauthorized entry or trespass. So here I think you have plenty of wiggle room to accept a chain link fence in lieu of a stockade fence.
Mhm.
But it is completely your call, in my opinion.
I'd rather see the chain link anyways.
And again, we have precedents with
Secure.
regards to what Vertex has not
Yep.
only proposed, but are going to be implementing.
But the balloon test was the other item where we did a waiver in the past, and we are for this too.
I think you'd
because-
simply make a finding that
Yeah.
the chain link fencing
Is
meets
sufficient.
the
Sufficient.
Yeah.
security barrier.
Yeah.
Meets the standards.
And
out.
yeah. Yep. Again, the drainage, no drainage calculations, so we really think that something should be submitted to support. They show a swale at the end, alongside the driveway till it hits the adjoining lot. I do have the plans, but it pretty much ends here, and I wanna make sure we're not flooding out what used to be the photo studio. That's all. Pretty straightforward. It's on the top of the hill, and I think that nothing is needed to mitigate the small amount of runoff, and they've got crushed stone, so we just simply need to make sure that the driveway's not gonna hurt anybody. Under licensed carrier, the application indicates that they're in the final stages of entering into an agreement. To me, that doesn't address the requirements where they're supposed to have an agreement and submit it to the board. But I defer to you, whether you think that their information is adequate or not. I'm only gonna go through some of the, really, I don't have much of the other, there's some very small drawing scale, architectural. On the architectural, they show a graphic representation of what it's gonna look like from the side, but there's no detailed electrical engineering drawings or any detailed equipment drawings to outline what's gonna be contained within the container, and therefore whether we know whether you have oil or other potential contaminants going on inside.
I thought we had plans presented that showed that, at least in this phase, before there was any co-located equipment, it was just gonna be a battery backup.
And a generator.
No,
Propane.
Not
Yeah.
for this one.
Am I misremembering?
I only remember batteries, right?
You're correct, yeah.
I mean, I have a toddler, I just remember things all the time.
So this is the representation here.
those are from other facilities, right?
Yep.
And you're not necessarily, I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but those are photos that are, why don't you come over here if you.
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, similar facilities
Can you
elsewhere.
explain what these photos
Yeah.
mean and represent
Yeah.
when you have that information here?
Looking around here.
Just like it says there, just typical shelter, so this is an example of a typical shelter at one of our compounds. Typical type of generator with propane tank and a typical cabinet style installation. So these are just examples of what you would
Yeah.
see at a site, but none of these are proposed right now.
Okay.
And you were correct about the battery backup.
Because that's what I remember, you said that at least for the tower.
Right.
Your only backup is a battery and it lasts for, what
For
is
our-
it, for 4 hours?
Yeah, for our radio system.
Yes,
that
for your
we're
radio
proposing,
system, it's
yes.
only for 4 hours.
That's right, that's
And I
6
had
hours.
requested, and it's certainly something we will discuss afterwards, what happens when the carriers start coming in and they want to back up their,
Yep.
not have backup power available.
Right.
So that is, that is directly related to and also slightly past the scope of tonight, but there are a whole set of concerns that we haven't addressed before as a town, specifically for co-location of equipment. Because co-location of equipment, at least as I read as I read it, requires a special permit, which requires a whole bunch of stuff that,
All of this.
yeah, so, and it also requires us to have a form and a process and some other stuff that I don't think exists yet. And a lot of that stuff there will be discussed in what that special permit process would be. But I believe, and just to reiterate, to surmise for the public, that as of this moment, we're just talking about the battery backup equipment, and all of those other co-located equipment that would bring in additional generators and propane would be subject to a separate special permit.
Not in scope for this one.
Yeah, well, they are clearly foreseeable down the road.
Yeah.
Because why would you not put one? But it wouldn't make sense. And actually, I think it's very much for the benefit of the townsfolk for an emergency preparedness standpoint.
Mhm.
That somebody puts a nice, reliable unit that isn't loud and disruptive and works for a long time when the power goes out. But yeah, that's separate. But yeah,
Well, I mean, they do make, the part of the petition to the board is the fact that this tower will aid the community in public safety. So I don't know whether you have the authority to require a generator or not. Or you could ask.
well, we certainly
That'll be a
ask.
future hearing at any rate.
Yeah, for when the actual communications equipment is co-located, which, and I guess to just raise administratively, that's something that our offices need to work on, a clear process for co-located equipment, because if this project was to go through, I imagine we're going to see 6 to 7 of those within the next year.
Mm.
So we're gonna need to have a cleaned up, refined process for that, but that's not specifically on for this, but definitely need to talk about that. Alright, so anything else that you wanna call attention to?
Just the grading restoration, the specification that they gave is for a turf lawn mix, and we really think that they should be using a Mass DOT slope mix, which is a low maintenance, very durable, dry weather, a little more appropriate. Again, equipment specifications, monopole foundation is stealth equipment, is not really noted. They, there is no landscape plan, and we agree that they don't need one. There is no NEPA environmental assessment, National Environmental Policy environmental assessment. They do not believe that an EA is required, we agree, so that if the planning board does approve this project, the applicant should at least file the checklist, the NEPA checklist as filed with the FCC, so just so you have it on record. And then really, the most significant things that are left are, the applicant has asked for the special permit to be valid for 5 years because their contracts with their suppliers, the telecommunications companies, last longer, but I don't honestly think you can, under Mass General laws, extend the time period of a special permit. It's codified in chapter 48, and I don't think you have the power to grant an extension beyond that. And I suggest that the applicant consults with their legal counsel to tell the board if there is a methodology to do that. And then the last one of my favorites, is the zoning bylaw says quite clearly a cash bond is required. The response was the applicant agrees to provide a bond in the form of or reasonably similar to the form accompanying this application, which I don't understand what that response says. I just wanna remind the board that if a surety company issues a bond, they issue them for a period of no more than 2 to 3 years, and then it will be incumbent upon you and or your administrator to follow up on every single project that has a surety to make sure that it's bonded for the life of the project. And that is why the board, prior to many of you, required a cash bond that accrues interest, because it's gonna be an awful lot of work for you and your administrator to keep check on those kind of things. So, we would like clarification on your behalf of what that response means.
Thank you, Bill. This is very, very great.
Yeah, these are particularly dense applications.
Yes.
Yep. Well, I did say in my letter that it is a reasonably complete application, but it's through no fault of the applicant, our bylaws have some conflicting issues.
Well, please don't go too far, because I imagine we're gonna have a conversation about some of these.
Thank
All right,
you.
so come on up and,
I think we did this before.
yeah. And
I like it.
what can we do to put some of these to bed? Specifically, because they're, I believe, the biggest issues, and because they're procedural issues, and you have counsel, I would very much like to hear what your thoughts are on the use and potential avenues for your permit through the uses. Whether you think that this is something where you should be going to the ZBA, or whether this is something that we should be looking under the TCA. Because ultimately, as the potential permit holder, there's risk to you if somebody was to appeal. So, I think you should have a say in terms of what that procedure looks like. And, like I said, I will attempt to counsel's opinion at least, but I have to have the TA do that.
Okay. Do you want me to go through the easy items first and then address that point at the end? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Well,
There was a lot of things that we could address very easily.
yeah,
that
I
the
guess
consultant brought up.
let's go through the easy stuff
Okay,
first.
just get that stuff out of the
Yeah.
way. Okay, great. But we appreciate how detailed the consultant's report was. It was very thorough. So we did send Marks an updated site plan yesterday via email, and I'm sure the consultant hasn't seen it yet. I have a copy, a full-size copy here as well. But I'll just address some of the points that he brought up that we changed on the plan. So, and I won't bother going through it, but if you want, I can put it on the screen, or I can show you on the plan. But on sheet 3, the site plan, we added 2 notes regarding the spill kit being on site and having portable sanitary facilities and portable water, along with 2 parking spaces in the turnaround. So those points were added to the plan. On sheet 4, which was the compound detail sheet, we noted that we added a note regarding any disturbed areas being treated with grass will be done per the Mass DOT specs. That's one of the points you had brought out. On sheet 7, there was a revised reference to the grass mixture to reflect the Mass DOT grass specs for shoulders and slopes exceeding 4.1. And with regard to the stamps on the site plan, we're just kind of basically waiting till we get a plan that we know everybody is comfortable with, and the final version will be stamped. The one sheet that has the vertical profile of the tower, the side profile, that was the one that we just looked at with all the pictures on it. That one won't have a stamp because we'll be ordering stamped tower drawings actually from the tower manufacturer that will have a stamp on that. So that's the only one on here that, you know, wouldn't have a stamp, if that makes sense. The FAA, that came up, we did receive our FAA approval on June 13th. The tower does require to be lit. The determination of no hazard means it's not a hazard to air navigation. If it was a hazard to air navigation, they would have issued a determination of hazard, which would prevent us from building anything. So the light just makes sure that it's safe. The type of lighting system that it is a dual system. So at night, it's a red light that blinks. It's just one light on the tower at the top, and it's a red light at night. And during the day, it's a white light basically that flashes. They're LED lights, so they're directed upwards instead of down towards the ground. So they shouldn't have an impact on the area on the ground. But in addition to that, we propose, and your bylaw actually requests us to do this, is to put a shield at the bottom of the light, which helps prevent anybody from the ground seeing the light. So that's the issue, or the result of the FAA study. So it is a determination of no hazard. So it is that the airport, Gardner Airport, had a chance to comment on it, and they received no negative comments. So hopefully that puts you at ease on that. With regard to the generator, that's true. Right now, we're not proposing a generator at the site. But when the first carrier comes, whoever they are, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they all use generators, and they will most definitely have a generator at their site. You can say that without any question whatsoever. It's very important to them. What we're proposing for our radio system now has a backup battery system, which will last for approximately 6 hours. We're close enough where if it was an outage that went out any longer than that, we could bring a portable generator to the site to keep it up and operational.
What do you mean your system? Your own phone system?
Our radio system, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Our 900 megahertz radio system.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
And that communicates the health of the tower, or what?
No, it's a two-way radio system, so if you remember the old Nextel system, it's very similar to that. It's a two-way dispatch radio system between, usually commercial companies use the type of network.
And can I ask, I mean, what is the purpose of it being there? Is it when somebody is there that they need to communicate with your
It works very similar to like a cellular or a PCS type of company, except it's local. It's not a nationwide company. We're just in New England using this type of system.
But it's only to be utilized by your employees?
Nope, it's open to the public.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So that was that. It came up regarding the lattice versus monopole. I mean, we prefer a lattice tower. I know the bylaws kind of mixed up in what it says in certain areas. I know Vertex had requested a waiver, and they received it for the lattice. The lattice tower is much more safer for people to work on, for them to climb and to work with, and it's easier to expand, and if it needs to be upgraded down the road, it's easier for that. So that's why we requested a lattice tower. The NEPA checklist, would be more than happy to provide that to you. We can tell you that we've received our approvals from as was mentioned, the Mass Fish, Game and Wildlife. There's no endangered species or habitats in that area. We've done a study with Massachusetts Historic Commission, and they've confirmed that the site has no issues with historic properties anywhere in the area now that we've received our FAA. And then the other things in the checklist have to do if it's actually in some sort of national park, that type of thing, or if there's any sort of RF radio frequency emissions issues, which this type of system is very low power, so there's no issues there. But we'd be happy to provide the NEPA checklist as part of an order of condition. Let's see, the bond. So I don't think the consultant had, I think we had provided a copy of an example of a bond at our last meeting, and I think from listening to the consultant, he probably didn't see that. So that I do have copies of that here. I also have copies of estimates from 3 different companies of what it would cost to remove all the equipment from the site, should it be abandoned. And I know I said this last time, but I feel like I just need to say it again, that we're literally spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this site here to build it and construct it. And for us to ever walk away from that site and just abandon it, it's never gonna happen. So we've dealt with some some towns, we've explained that to them, and they've just waived the whole bond process altogether. If this town doesn't feel comfortable with that, we understand, but we're not going anywhere. And the whole bond issue, for us is, you know, and I'm saying this with all due respect, it just seems like one of those things that's just not needed at all. And with regard to the drainage calculations, you know, our proposed area of disturbance, it's a very small area, it's less than 16,000 square feet. Currently, we're proposing a swale, a check dams, and leveling area. And there's no wetlands at all in the vicinity, and we were hoping that the planning board would agree. I think the consultant even mentioned it's basically a lot of crushed stone and the driveway access to it, so there's not a huge impact. So we're hoping the board would find that it's not being necessary, but if you do feel it's necessary, we could get that done.
Well, just for clarification on there, I believe the suggestion was drainage plans or a more detailed narrative.
Yeah.
I think what we would like to see, unless anybody feels differently, would be a more detailed narrative. And I think that was, is that a fair statement of your recommendation?
Yeah,
Bill?
I mean, the point is, you've got a swale, and you've got a level spreader, but we have no idea once that water gets, at the end of the swale, hits that level spreader, where it goes after that, cause we don't have any topography, we don't have any information. So does it impact the neighbor who is not the Demalia family? Or what ultimately happens there? Because while you may have 16,000 square feet at the top of the hill, you still have a driveway that you own all the way down to the road. And if you're improving the driveway and you're making it wider, then you may even have impacts onto Route 68. So somebody should just address the fact that.
And that is a sensitive issue in the town because there have been significant issues with projects and work that's been done that has caused significant gravel and earth runoff onto some of the streets, so.
Understood, it's just the closest neighbor is 705 feet away, our site is here, closest neighbor is here, that's a long distance.
But
it's
addressing the
noted.
driveway and such, I don't think it's too much of a burden just to
Yep.
improve the narrative for us.
Sure.
And to the extent that some of it is exactly what you're saying there, we just need to detail it.
Okay. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. If you want to continue on about the other matters that you mentioned at the beginning.
Well, let's stay with the easy stuff for the
Sure.
moment. Bill, did that get your punch list for the easy stuff before we get to the hard stuff?
Well, he's looking at that, can I ask a question real quick?
Sure, just identify yourself for the record.
Katie Young, Ragged Hill, I'm also a selectman, or excuse me, select board, whatever. Yeah, so the lights for the, uplights to notify aircrafts. If the batteries, how long do the batteries work?
The batteries for the lights, the batteries typically last 6 hours. They could be upgraded to last longer, you just add more batteries to it.
So what happens after 6 hours?
That's where we could bring a portable generator from our facility there.
How do you get up the hill when there's an ice storm?
We have equipment, we have snow equipment, we have snowmobiles, we have Arctic cats. We have a lot of equipment at our availability because we have to access sites that are up on top of mountaintops with snow and ice with
Yeah.
no access in the winter.
Cause that driveway turns into, glare ice is an understatement, like they
It
don't.
gets slippery.
They can't even get plow people to go, they can't pay them to come take care of their driveway.
Half the town does.
Yeah, it's,
So-
well, no, theirs is bad, extremely bad, and the only reason why I bring this up is if we have an ice storm of '08 and there's an issue trying to get something up that driveway in the back, or a 3-foot snowstorm like we kinda had in March where everything turns into cement, that's my only thing is, that is a safety issue if these lights go off after 6 hours and the power's been now off for 12 hours and there's, you know, That's my only 2 cents to put in there, where a generator could last a lot longer than a battery backup system for safety purposes.
The lights on the towers is LED, how long do they last?
Once the power goes out,
Or,
Yeah.
do they run off your batteries?
they would run off our batteries.
Is it- okay.
If this is a huge concern for the board and the town, we'll put a generator in, it's not the end of the world. And, you know, the battery system easily works for what we're trying to do, but if you preferred for us to have a generator to monitor the
I
lights
think-
and everything else, we're more than happy to do that.
I think if I may, Mr. Chair, is, I think the question is whatever power is there, either battery or alternative other mechanism, it's the length of time that the alternative energy can potentially provide. 2008 is a very good example. You have multiple towers here, you have limited resources, really bad availability to how to, in terms of getting equipment to different places. And this cell tower might be one of, I don't know how many you have around this area, plus God knows how many others that are potentially affected. So I can understand what Kathy has just, you know, what Katie has been presenting here as a concern. I don't think it has to be necessarily a generator. It's just anything that is more than the 6 hours is the question here.
Mhm.
And is that considered sufficient? And more importantly is, what is your track record? I mean, have you been audited for, or just checked for resilience purposes in terms of if you have had cases like we have had hurricanes obviously here in Massachusetts, we've had severe snowstorms, we even have had tornadoes.
Mhm.
The question is what's your response time to attend to situations like the one that is being mentioned right now?
Yep, so we have an office in Marshfield,
Mhm.
and we have an office in Dunbarton, New Hampshire, with generators and crews and people ready to respond when there's an issue. When the lighting system goes out on a tower, we're notified immediately, and we immediately notify the FAA, so they would notify the Gardner Airport to make sure everybody's aware of it. So when that tower gets constructed, there's an FAA map that the pilots are required to have. A lot of it's electronic now, but that'll include the tower there, and it'll have an identification number on it. So if the lights were to go out, we would notify the FAA, and all the pilots in the area would be notified of the event. But we don't allow our lights to stay out long, so if there was an issue, we would get it serviced right away.
That, well, that background I think is helpful. I think that
Yeah.
knowing that there's a notification that goes out automatically makes it, I think, less of a concern to me.
Right.
Correct.
The thing that I think is a concern for all of us, and we know is a particularly popular issue in the town, is emergency preparedness and disaster recovery. And I know that's outside of, I think it's outside the scope here because we're not talking about the actual communications equipment itself, and we're talking about just the tower. But to say that that's a meaningful issue to us, whoever's co-locating with you, it is going to be a most meaningful issue
I'm getting that.
to whoever goes and puts equipment on any tower in Hubbardston.
And I can
it's-
assure you, they're concerned of the same thing.
Yeah, it's a big issue for us. Was there anything else that was on the punch list, Bill?
Oh, just the significant issues.
Okay, so jumping into the significant stuff.
Okay, so for the significant stuff, I'd like to hand that off to Shayna Gallinet, who hopefully is still on the Zoom call.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
Oh.
And-
You can hear me?
And just identify yourself for the record, please.
Okay, sure. Hi, I'm Shayna Gallinet. I'm a consultant for Industrial Tower and Wireless. Just so this board knows, I am an attorney by trade. In my consulting relationship with Industrial, I largely serve a business focus, but I work regularly with the outside counsel that Industrial has in each state that we work in. So outside counsel, the firm Phillips and Angley was involved in the review of this proposal, and we've spoken to them on the consultant's report as well. So, thank you, Kevin, for leaving the fun stuff with me.
You're welcome.
Just for starters, to talk about the conflicts of the bylaw with respect to section 4.2F, allowing the use by special permit in the residential district. The board probably recalls that we discussed this at the last first night of the hearing, but we described our proposal and provided an opinion to the building commissioner, who then issued his denial letter, which led us to this board. It's my understanding that town council, and just from your discussions this evening, issued an opinion that would allow the planning board to interpret the inconsistency between this special permit use and the fact that we're not in the wireless overlay district of Article 18. And just again, as the board might recall, we discussed the issue at length the first night, and no member of the board raised an issue. I mean, it was identified as something that would largely impact us procedurally moving forward. So if we'd like to have further discussion on that at this time, we can, but I would ask that the board use its authority to remain consistent with the denial letter stating that we need a special permit for use in this district. Outside of the other issues, the merged lot issue, but with this specific issue.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board on that one?
I think we still have pending the information that will come from you that that was given by the town council, so unless we have that piece of information, which we're still waiting on, we'll have to wait on this here.
Okay.
That's my personal view.
Mr. Murray?
Do you perhaps wanna ask the building inspector to weigh in on that particular part of the, as the zoning enforcement officer, on the part of 18, Article 18, which says all towers shall be located within the wireless district?
He very carefully crafted his response. That was certainly contemplated in what he already wrote.
Okay.
So I suggest that what we got from him is what we're gonna get from him. And it is a little bit of a Schrodinger's building determination, so, which I think does reflect what the interaction between the two separate sections, the 4.2 and then the Article 18. But I do also think that even without looking deep into that, as long as there's a prima facie TCA showing, which is there is a gap, and the gap is served by this project, and that there are no other projects in the area that would confirm, and that's also been presented in the report. That's an alternative set of reasoning for the board to have authority. So I don't believe that that particular item, and this is now speaking as an individual board member, not the chair, I don't believe that that particular, or as town council, because I'm not the town's lawyer, I'm a lawyer, I don't represent the town, I don't believe that issue has been taken out of our jurisdiction, specifically because of those two issues and because of the TCA. Yep.
So I don't recall the applicant asserting that there's no other valid location in this area to fill that void, and I just think that that should be made part of the application if it's a true statement.
That would be valuable to include in the record.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it at the first meeting when I was going through the coverage studies, I talked about it, but I'd be happy to provide the details of that.
Yeah,
for you.
if you could provide a statement of that, and
Sure.
I'm pretty sure that your council is gonna be pretty familiar with the TCA, given that Industrial Tower is the lead plaintiff on several of the cases I looked at.
Yeah.
And that our council looked at too. And again, just give us that breakdown. Because to Bill's point, if there's certainly a question of interpretation you can have about how 4.2 and 18 are working together, but it gets pretty lights out when you look at the TCA on whether or not we have authority in that situation. So we need to have a well-reasoned decision, and we're gonna count on you to do the work for that.
Sure.
Does anybody have any wildly different feelings on that or different interpretations? Does that make sense to you, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Could I ask who you use for town council?
We use KP Law.
Copeland and Page.
Yeah. Carolyn Murray is our designated town council, but, I'm sure as you're aware, they have folks that specifically do TCA litigation, so. All right, so does that make sense as a place to leave that issue off so that we're moving towards resolution? So you're gonna get us the TCA information, that would be applicable there on whether or not there are other sites. Cause we did talk about it, but talking about it in a cursory way, I don't think is the same thing as just presenting us a brief analysis of it.
Yep, so you just basically want the alternative site analysis, why other sites didn't work and why we chose this site, and it's the only site that works.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And-
conclusion.
And that was something that did come up with the Vertex one because of the shape of all the other lots. There were no other lots in that downtown area that weren't town-owned, which is a whole separate set of issues that were possible lots for doing it.
And to provide the coverage that was required
Yeah.
Needed.
or
Yeah.
needed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the first prong, second prong, so
Exactly.
coverage, availability. Right, and that makes sense to you on Zoom there?
Yes, it sure does, and I just want to add that we would also provide a TCA memo from our outside counsel, Jeff Angley, who handled most of our TCA claims, and I think that it might be relevant in this case to provide his opinion on all of these, well, okay, I'm not going to say all of these issues, but the specific ambiguous issues as they relate to the TCA, and the fact that, you know, just to now briefly touch on the large combined lot that is merged, any argument that we would be making on that case would also be for a variance would be TCA based as well, regarding the fact that coverage is needed in the area and that this is the only location where we can provide that necessary coverage. So we could provide a memo in line with Kevin's alternative site analysis as well.
Yeah, and that's really the second major stumbling point that we need to talk about. Specifically the merger of lots as it relates to multiple structures, because there's a couple ways to slice that onion. The first one is, like we discussed, that we may have already established a precedent that a cell tower is an accessory use. So if we did do that, that's something that you should certainly argue. Like.
Okay.
And.
Thank you.
That was kind of a nice platter.
I mean, like, what else is there to say? Like, I didn't appreciate that we were doing that, but yeah. And then, alternatively, whether or not that puts us in a place where our jurisdiction to rely on that can even be challenged, because that last project was challenging because of TCA concerns. And there were certainly things that ran through where, just because of the TCA, I don't even know if we had the authority for some of it, so I don't think we can just look back and say that it completely creates a precedent for how we handle anything, because it gets weird when you pull the TCA in. So I think I'm going to ask town council specifically on that, on what her thoughts are for our jurisdiction on that, because I don't want to put words in her mouth. But it would also be good if you guys could provide us information like you suggested on the applicability of TCA to that. And this I would like to open up for discussion to the board, Mr. Murray, because it is a new issue. We didn't talk about it, on what the thoughts are, because ultimately the TCA does a lot of things. But if it wasn't for the TCA, is this something that we would have to be sending back to the ZBA? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I haven't done that research, and I haven't asked town council, so.
Or you could ask the building inspector if this is an accessory structure.
Yeah, I think we should do that. Yeah, can you guys reach out to Duffy and see if you can get an opinion on that? whether a cell tower constitutes an accessory structure, then probably remind him that apparently it did in the past at one point. But obviously he has his own discretion,
And he was not the building commissioner then?
and he was not the building commissioner then.
Okay.
That's right.
We were essentially without building commissioner then.
Yep.
Alright, and that, those are the two, were there other major issues? Those are the two major issues.
No, I think principally the merge lot and the,
Yeah.
zoning.
Oh, yeah, well, the merged lot obviously has the impact because of the frontage and stuff.
Right.
I assume you guys are gonna get, come to us with some kind of opinion on that.
Well, I mean, if the building commissioner says the cell tower is an accessory structure, why are, the zoning bylaw says except accessory structures are allowed, so
Yeah, or
that solves the
alternatively
problem.
that. So. Alright, so I think we walked down the punch list and either put on track for resolution or resolve just about all of it. Are there other items to bring up or discuss on it?
Not this time.
I know it's tough because it's so information dense. It's like, yeah, let me recall one random thing out of this 250 page pile of materials I reviewed. But yeah, thank you, Bill, for your work on that because it is
There was a lot of
is a
information.
Herculean thing to move through.
So the only thing I would request is that any revised materials get forwarded to me at least 2 weeks before your next public hearing, cause I really would like to see the narrative before it comes in front of the board. And if it does, as you can tell, we're not crazy worried about it, but we would like to work with you to make sure everybody's happy.
As stuff rolls in, it'll be going up onto the Google Drive, but I'll try and send you an email to let you know that, hey,
Yeah.
new stuff there.
So is that how you wanna work that through Mark?
I do everything through Mark.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark is the hub at the center of the wheel.
Cause we had just received the consultant's report last week, so we didn't have the time to,
No, I got to it as quick as I could.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fine, and like I just got the report back from our council yesterday, and you know, have a full-time job and kids, so I just got to look at it before this and was like, oh, we're gonna need to talk about that. So yeah, it's a challenge,
Yeah.
you know. Where the rest of us are all volunteers, you guys are getting paid for it, but anyways, so I think from a procedural standpoint, we're gonna be looking to talk about this a month from now, because will 2 weeks give you time to get stuff to Bill, and then Bill will have 2 weeks to take a look at it, or our second meeting?
You had already talked about canceling the first meeting in July anyway,
Yeah, cause I don't think we're.
because it normally would have been the 5th.
Yeah, we're not gonna meet on the 5th of July. So I don't think we're gonna do that.
Can I give you a quote to write the draft permit?
You did not.
Yeah, let's, Bob, you guys sort all that out.
Well,
You
the
looking
question
more
is,
like the
do you
29th?
want me to help you draft the permit?
Well, we're gonna need you in the process. We know that much. I guess it's worth having a conversation about that now, in terms of the actual drafting of the special permit. There's been a couple ways where that's happened. I know the way it happened with the last cell phone tower is that I ended up writing it with Alice, and I can say that is certainly not the way we're doing it this time. I lost a summer of my life writing my first multi-page special permit based upon a 250-page application and multiple lawsuits. Yeah, I'm not writing the draft of the special permit. So the draft of the special permit, I guess in an ideal world, needs to get put together and essentially be ready to be voted and signed at either the next meeting or the meeting after that. So, and I guess I open this up to the board for discussion too.
Well, what's the timeline that we're looking at now?
Well, yeah, what, 2 weeks?
2 months. Well, you would want a draft probably for your next meeting.
Yeah.
We're gonna assume that all the other items are resolved. And of course, a draft approval can be a draft denial pretty easily as well, or something in between, but
So the reason I'm asking is that, our next meeting is not until the 20th of July, which is a Thursday. If we extended that and tried to do it on the 27th, it would be 4 weeks away from now. The question will be, do you have enough time to produce the information that is required by, as a result of this meeting, and then Bill to have enough time to come back to us in those 2 weeks afterwards?
Yeah, we should.
So if we're okay with this here, if you can get something to Bill no later than the 13th of July, that's 2 weeks from now. And Bill, once you get that, that will give you 2 weeks, until the 27th. What do you think?
well, the other, yes, we can do that.
At least sort of like a marker.
Yeah. The other option is the applicant can submit a proposed draft for you and my consideration. It depends on who gets paid to do it, that's all.
Yeah.
I was gonna suggest that, but I didn't want it to seem
Well, I think I'm,
presumptuous.
Jump with that.
well, as an individual member, yeah, I think that I'm open to that.
Should we have a discussion on this amongst the board members here?
Yeah, how does the rest of the board
I'm sorry, I
feel
wasn't
about
listening.
that? To, in order to save on, workflow and expense, allow the applicant to put together a first draft to submit to Mr. Murray for the special permit.
May I ask a quick question? You've been confronted with special permits in the past, right? And so you have experience on how these special permits need to be drafted to the point where we can expect something of reason, that is fairly reasonable.
Yeah, of course.
Well, we would start with Vertex.
Yeah, they would start with the Word document of the one that I wrote with Alice, I would hope.
Precisely, so we have something to start off with. You can take that, plus the experience that you have writing, special permits for other, groups, and utilize the 2 weeks to craft something that hopefully will be reasonable enough for us to receive on our end and then review. And it gives us enough time in 2 weeks.
And we can get your report from the town council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
I mean, I still think that the 27th is probably the best date
yeah.
I think
for us
so
to get
too.
together.
So for a point of clarification, you're gonna be actually signing the permit a month after the 27th.
Which, what does that do to the stop clock? Or is there anything we need to?
Where are we, well, where are we on,
That would
where-
probably be close to it, but
where are we
I'm
on the
not sure
shot
that's
clock?
an overriding issue.
It's a
Yeah,
good question.
yeah, totally forgot about that.
Shayna, do you have any idea where we are with regard to the shot clock?
Cause we told for a little while for completeness and,
But they can also grant you an extension.
We can.
yeah.
Yeah,
If they're writing the permit.
right.
Yeah.
And the time is
I would have to look at, where we are with the shot clock, but we could grant an extension, to a date certain or something like that if it was necessary.
It'd be
Yeah.
your second meeting in August.
Yeah. And I'll get you guys the Word document version.
But we discussed some things tonight that we didn't really come to a resolution on, like the bond. And when we're putting the draft together, I wanna make sure that we're presenting something
let's
that
have the
For-
discussion now.
for the-
agreed to.
For the bond, I would suggest using the language that we previously approved for the bond.
Cause we reviewed that
Because-
language and a lot of it doesn't seem appropriate to us. I can explain why, but it's just, it was very high and there was an increase every year, I believe. There was some things that are very out of the ordinary.
Yeah, that was a challenging evening. That ended up being a compromise settlement with like 2 consultants, 6 lawyers, and like 30 people from the public in the room. So there are some things there. So I guess to try to streamline the conversation, I don't think that anybody on the board is gonna support waiving the bond in its entirety.
Mhm.
I just don't think that's gonna happen, am I wrong? Yeah, so we are gonna wanna see some kind of reasonable bonding.
Mhm.
Nobody's gonna support waiving it. And we hear what you're saying, that why would you abandon something that cost that much to put in, but there have been examples of towers being abandoned, granted not around here, but there have been some examples. And it's also a standard that we just hold people to, because we also have bonds for the solar installations and the best battery energy storage systems and all that stuff, and
So, does the,
Mr. Chair, sorry if I could jump in, we're not, I mean, we would love if you waive it, but that's not really what we were proposing. We were, proposing to use a removal bond instead of a cash bond, and Kevin has previously submitted what we used in Ringe, New Hampshire as a removal bond, and what we do in that case is we get 3 estimates, Kevin has those as well, from 3 different companies assessing what the value, would be to remove the tower. So we're suggesting a bond, removal bond in that amount. And it's my understanding that, just to touch on the consultant's point, that the bonding, company actually notifies the town if the bond is not renewed. That's my understanding.
That's true.
And it might be able to be a condition of the bond as well.
I believe the point that is about to come up is that we've had a situation over the last few years where we've had a significant period of time where there wasn't anybody sitting in the chair to open that envelope. So, that's,
Plus, the notification does not necessarily go to the planning board, but has gone to the Board of Assessors
yeah,
and other entities in the town, so they get a certified letter, but
I
they
see.
don't know what to do with it.
yeah. Our office is in a very good place right now, and we're hoping to keep it that way in the future, but it
Well,
is-
I would just suggest to you as well that, you know, I've heard that you're not willing to waive the 5-year requirement, that we come back before the board in 5 years, so there is potential to reassess a bond at that time.
A special
The value of it at least, or to have it, to increase it, you know, there could be some language written in the decision that the bond be increased at that time. And that's a check as well, that in 5 years, you certainly would know at that time that it's still active.
But a special permit under Mass General Law, to the best of my recollection, is only allowed to be issued for 3 years. And that's Mass General Law, it's not something like that the planning board has the ability to modify.
Their bylaw says 5 years.
Yeah, it's
We
one
were
of those money
asking it
issues,
for
cause
Dave to-
Article 18 says 5.
State law
Or-
trumps, I'm pretty sure.
Actually, Article 18 says up to 5.
we typically get a special
Okay.
permit and don't come back to ask for it to be renewed. It's once we have the permit and we act on it and build it with a building permit. There's like maybe 2 towns that I know of the 150 that we have sites of in New England, that require us to come back and renew that special permit, but normally that's not something that we ever do.
Can you speak to that?
No.
At our next meeting, Mark, can you speak to that a little bit on some pure practices?
Try.
Yeah, the challenges of a small town.
An all volunteer force.
Yeah,
So, I feel
Yeah.
like we jumped into that second topic, but do we have a resolution on the bond?
I guess the bond to start with.
Yeah.
Propose a reasonable bond to us, we're not gonna waive the bond. I don't think anybody is married to a number, I think the methodology you talked about is reasonable.
Okay.
So, put that down for us, anybody feel any differently?
No.
I agree.
As far as the length of the special permit, I don't know, I haven't been here over 3 years, I haven't seen one come back. So.
Well, that's a very good point,
I know,
because even for the solar, we have not seen them come back.
Yeah, they haven't been coming back, so
We've had issues with that.
yeah, so I think that's something where we need to look deep within ourselves and figure out what we're doing as a town. If the MGL say we can only do it for 3 years, then,
Well, so what the MDL says is they must initiate the requirements of the special permit within 3 years, so that they can't sit on the special permit and not initiate construction.
Yeah.
Once they initiate construction, they've exercised the permit, and as you say, it's unusual for them to come back.
Yeah.
Except your bylaw says you shall.
Yeah.
but to the best of my.
For review.
Right.
But to the best of my knowledge, I don't think that's been done in the last half a decade.
I haven't seen anybody come back, no.
Yeah.
Well, the pot places are coming back.
Yeah, they come back all the time.
Oh, really?
Hey, forget those.
If you want, we could have our legal counsel provide an opinion on that.
Yeah.
I understand it exactly how the consultant just mentioned it. If you've exercised everything in the permit, you don't normally come
Yeah.
back, but if you want.
So can I ask the question? Your intention is to start potentially this project in 2023?
That's our goal, yes.
And to complete the project, and it's your interest to get this done as soon
Oh,
as possible.
absolutely, yeah, we don't wanna set it.
Because you have revenue otherwise that's not coming in.
And we let it expire, and then we have to come back and start it from step
Yeah.
one, we don't.
Precisely.
Yeah,
Precisely.
we don't wanna do that.
Yeah.
So what is there a concern or a problem with it being the 3 years?
No, there's no concern about that part of it at all. It's once the tower is built, everything's up and operational and running, and we have to come back 5 years from now.
So I think we have some discretion in terms of when they have to come back to have that review with us,
So,
right?
no, well, just to kind of paraphrase and simplify all of it, because hell, my head's spinning from it. We actually have a provision in Article 18 that says we're supposed to be having people come back for reapproval on it.
It's not permissive, it's a shall.
Yeah,
It's obligatory.
it's just, we've never done that as a practice, despite the fact that it's actually in the rule. So I think it would be helpful to have an opinion from your council on how.
I don't think that the solar bylaw has that.
And they never came back.
I thought solar and the best did. Either way, that's beyond the scope of tonight.
I believe
So-
in the article, it says that we will not renew their permit if they don't give us the information.
Yeah, it does for the
That's the
modified ones.
reports,
Reports.
for the reports, and that's only for the BES.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the solar one.
Oh, really?
Yes.
But
Well-
the issued permits actually contain it.
It's getting late and we're going afield, so
Okay.
I think we can
And we'll get up at 5,
figure this
so.
out, where we all talk to our lawyers about it and figure out what we should actually be doing.
I'll have mine call yours.
Yeah.
So what are we talking in terms of when we get back here?
The 27th?
Yeah, I
So
think that's.
did you guys make that decision firmly?
Tacitly.
Or do you wanna make
I mean,
it
I'm
2
okay
weeks?
doing it to 27th.
Well, so there won't be time to clean up this stuff or even start the beginnings of a working draft in 2 weeks, which would put it at the
13th.
Yeah, the 13th. So the 27th, and there's.
Oops, sorry.
I guess we have a question. So I guess the question for scheduling in July is, the obvious answer for this is the 27th.
Right.
If we have any other business come in the next couple days, or if Royal Sun Farms commits to actually come in, we should meet on the 12th and the 13th. Although I guess if you miss 3 meetings, then I wanna be helpful and flexible, but that's not really our problem, the missing the meetings. I don't wanna be holding back a business to the extent that we don't have to. So I guess this has to go to a date certain, so this goes to the 27th.
Correct.
And then generally, I think we schedule a tentative for.
On the 12th, which is the Wednesday?
Or the 13th, if any business comes in or if we get a
No, I'm getting
confirmation.
confused. Too many dates.
And that would be a very quick meeting.
To assess.
Do we have any other business that's likely to come in before the 27th?
Nothing that I know of.
So I leave it up to the board. Do we try to put something on the 12th or the 13th, potential, in case anything comes in, and to try to help out Royal Sun with actually coming here, or do we just say our next meeting's the 27th because we're continuing to a date certain for this anyways?
My personal preference is doing the 27th. I
I
think that
agree.
we have
That's
bent
mine
over
too.
backwards for Royal Farm.
Okay.
And I'm not unhappy the fact that we can extend some help, but we've done it already 3 times.
Okay. So we'll schedule our next meeting for the 27th, and then that means, is there anything else we need to talk about? Then we'll have a motion to continue to a date certain.
No, I just wanna set the expectation, what are we expecting to have on the 27th? Their draft and a review by us or by Bill?
Yeah, by then, we'll have updates on the other punch list items.
Yeah.
Which Bill will have gone through, and through Mark, there can certainly be correspondence between the applicant and the office. And I think conceivably for the 27th, you guys could have a draft, assuming those issues all resolve, particularly the jurisdictional ones, because they're the big ones.
Since you're
And
no
if
longer
those are
writing,
done-
may I quickly ask our consultant a quick question? Since you're no longer writing the special permit, if you receive a draft and it's just a review, do you still need those 2 weeks, or do you only need 1 week in order to be able to come back on the 27th with sort of your?
Oh, I need 2 weeks.
You will need 2 weeks, okay.
Yeah.
We're buried.
So I'm
Yeah.
kind of project managing it and working backwards. So you needed 2 weeks, you need it by the 13th. Is there something that prevents you to get a good working draft, a good, fairly solid draft to Mr. Murray by the 13th?
I think we can do that.
Okay, so then let's do it that way, and just make sure that we're setting the expectations. 13th, 27th, you get the 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay?
because even if we were at the point where there were either or paragraph selections at that point to
Yeah.
talk about, that's fine too.
Yeah.
There still will be open questions.
Correct.
So.
Yeah.
So,
And Mr. Chair, can I just ask, would we also receive the opinion of your lawyer or any of that information ahead of the hearing through Mark?
Assuming it is not privileged and being released, and I asked the TA and town council about that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that would be helpful, for sure.
yeah. So procedurally, for the balloon test results, is your submittal for the record the PowerPoint, or is there something
Nope, I have it here
else?
actually for you.
Oh, okay.
So I have the photo simulation package for you, the FAA approval, which I think I already emailed that to you anyways,
Yeah.
and then the bond issues, bond information.
May I ask the chair something about this here? Last time when we did this here for Vertex, I think we published this information on our website. Will we be doing something similar to this here for?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Once we
think
get it all
it's
approved, right?
setting we've set the expectations with the town in terms of what kind of communication we're providing, that's why I'm asking him. And therefore, the question now is you're handing him something that is in a physical form, do you have that in electronic form?
Well, the Vertex, I've seen the Vertex application. The full application is on there, but any submittals that were done after the fact.
No, I'm talking about the balloon test.
No, I know, but like with Vertex, their balloon test results, that's not available on your website, that information's
It
not
was.
out there.
Yeah, it's up there.
Well, the application's still there and that information's still there, but I never saw any.
It got posted to a different news feed.
Okay.
But it is on the site, cause one of them went through like the main site news feed, and the other one went through the planning board news feed.
Yeah.
Okay,
But yeah, it was.
cause I was curious what the consultant said about
I think it went through the
Vertex's
main one.
application and wasn't there.
Yeah, it was.
I think it went through the towns, and it was there because
Yeah.
everybody had a lot of comments on this here.
Yeah, that definitely was published on the website.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's not there.
there was a lot of
To answer your
public
question though,
discussion.
no, I just wanted to make sure we're all being
Yeah.
equal when it came to how you handled that.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely, that
we
makes
should-
perfect sense,
we
but you
should put
have
that
this
up.
also in electronic form?
Yes, the balloon test, I tried to email that to you and it got bounced
Yeah, you
back
said-
because the
you said-
file's too
yeah.
large, so that's the only thing I can't.
Did you try it individually or just in conjunction with the other
You know,
stuff?
I don't know that I did, I'll try that tomorrow.
Try it, if not,
If
I'll
not,
I'll
I could
scan
get
it.
you a thumb drive too and send that in.
Alternatively, you can look for Dropbox or something of that nature.
Yeah, I could send it OneDrive, I suppose, use that.
One more question, who will be going to the building commissioner regarding the accessory structure question? Did you want us to do that?
Yeah, the
or-
applicant.
Yep.
Yep, yes, us, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
So that's one thing we can't control for August 13th, if you get something back from the building inspector or not, so it's.
Right.
wait, are we talking about August or July?
July.
July.
Oh, I thought you said August, no.
I mean,
Wait, but
that
you
could
said
wait.
August, right?
Nope.
We're talking about July. July 27th is when this is going to be continued to, and July 13th is when you need the documentation by?
Correct.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
That's the target
Alright,
dates.
so we can't control the building commissioner's
Yeah,
response.
But that opinion could be submitted at the 27th. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't need it for the 13th.
Yeah.
helpful, but not needed.
It's up to.
Yeah,
Very
and
helpful.
that's a situation where I think there's two possible paragraphs,
Yes.
because there's that, or there's the
I-
TCA, or
No.
they're gonna simultaneously apply, yeah, that gives everybody a more defensible position.
Yeah, so I don't know if your email address has appeared on any of the threads so far, but
I
I'll,
don't think
I'll
so.
send it to you, any submittals of this.
My email?
Yeah, of this related information.
Okay.
Can go in parallel to Bill and to.
So when I send something to you, you want me to CC? No, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Works.
Hang on.
Alright, so we have, anything else? We have a date certain, so
To continue this year.
somebody's gonna need to make a motion to continue to a date certain, and I'd like to request that they specify 7:00 in case we have other business.
I'll make that motion, 7:00, to continue the meeting until
Yep.
July 17th, July 27th.
July 27th.
Yes, I second the motion.
So here in a first and a second, any discussion? Alright, so call on a vote.
Steiger, aye?
Holman's eye.
Russell, I.
Jack, aye.
Monroe, aye. So the public hearing is continued.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shana.
I think we can,
Continued, is that a meeting?
No, we're gonna have to, I'm just giving them a moment and was looking at,
Thank you so much.
You too.
Me too. I know the balloon test was definitely up, because that link went out on Facebook a lot.
It was on the website.
Yeah. Alright, so moving down the list, matters not reasonably anticipated by chair. I think we actually did a pretty good job anticipating a whole lot of stuff. We haven't received any updates yet from a proposed project for the sand pits. That's still currently going on with town staff. We still don't have a formal recommendation from the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which was what everybody locked in on, but we're getting close. MRPC is doing some good work on that. Nate is still working with MRPC on finishing out the last chapter of the master plan. They are currently swamped and they're down a planner again. So, they're really only working on one project at a time for everybody, but it is what it is. I don't know if there's any other questions about MRPC or any of those other ongoing projects. Any additional public comment for anything that's not on the agenda? Anything else from the board that anybody wants to bring up, or?
I'm all set.
Awesome, well in that case, would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
You're in a first, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Can you second? I don't think you
You
can.
got a second.
I'll second.
Oh, jeez.
It's not
Special
special.
permit's over, I'm muted again.
Here in a
There was a big
first and
silence there, I was.
I know, we're all just soaking in
I
the
didn't
awkward
catch
moment.
that.
I mean, with the later
So,
meetings, they get punchy.
The awkward silence, somebody has to fill in, that's good.
Second was denied.
It wasn't good enough.
So, not debatable, calling the vote.
Steiger, aye?
Holman's eye.
Jack, aye.
Monroe, aye. We are adjourned.
I didn't
Thank you,
fall for
everyone.
it twice.